welcome to Crafty Meraki's YouTube channel. Aditi here, and today I am playing with the new release Orchid Opulence stamp and die set. I am going to be doing a little watercolor stamping technique using the distress inks, and I think this creates for quick, easy, loose watercoloring. So aligning my stamp on my stamping platform, I am using watercolor paper here, and first, I begin by masking the layers that I don't want to stamp, mainly the sentiments and the foliage elements that come on this stamp set. The best thing about this stamp set is you can stamp all the elements and die cut all the elements on one go. Now, they also come with the effortless artistry papers, and those are pre-colored elements, and I think they make for quick, easy projects. Again, you can die cut all of those at one single go. Now, focusing on watercolor stamping, I am bringing in few shades of the distress ink. So I have picked raspberry, seedless preserve, wilted violet, and chipped sapphire. And I am just using the ink pad and stamping that, rubbing that basically on my stamp. And I am doing this very randomly. I want to create a multi-tone effect. So at places I am stamping the picked raspberry, at places I am stamping the wilted violet, and bringing in the seedless preserves and chipped sapphire wherever I need those colors. So just stamping the ink directly onto the stamp. By that I mean applying ink directly from the ink pad onto the stamp. I then mist it slightly with water and then stamp that on my watercolor cardstock. Now the trick here is, if the water is too much, the color will bleed and you will get a more loose, blotchy stamped effect. If the water is too less, then you will get a solid ink color. So I am basically first just inking up the stamps and spraying water from a distance about 2 or 3 times, just to make sure that I have enough water to moisten all that ink but not have it all flowy and gooey. So with this sort of a technique, it is important to use a stamping platform, because then it's very easy to go back with the ink colors repeatedly at the same place, just in case you've not got the entire image stamped. So you can see that I actually am doing that a couple of times repeatedly, just to make sure that I have a nice outline. Although this is not a defined outline, I still have a nice watercolor effect and the elements are stamped on the paper. Now for the foliage, I am bringing in crushed olive and peeled paint. So once my flowers have been stamped, I remove all that masking tape and I am just again smushing the ink from both the greens directly onto the foliage elements, misting them with water and then stamping them onto my cardstock. I do this about 2 or 3 times until I'm happy with the stamped image impression that I have. Now to further color this, I am using a watercolor brush pen and I am just reactivating the outline that we've stamped with distress inks and pulling all of that color inward into the petals just to color the flowers. I also bring in the same shades of the distress inks and I pick color with my watercolor brush marker directly from the ink pad and lay that at places on the petal. I am mostly following the colors that I have in the outline, so I bring in the violet and the pink and the chipped sapphire wherever I know that there is a little bit of that on my petal. So just alternating that, I slowly start coloring these, and this is a very loose watercolor coloring style. I am not too worried about the shading here. I am actually blending in color, so that itself gives me a nice shading, and focusing mostly on, like I said, a loose watercoloring just to get all of these images colored. So for that reason, sometimes I really enjoy this stamping technique, because distress inks are water reactive And just having your outline stamped with the colors that you want really helps in creating this loose watercolored style. Definitely, if you have a detailed outline and then go in with watercolors to color it, that really gives a different look. But I think this creates for a more natural, organic look, giving us a more realistic feel to the petals. And with the watercolor paper itself, there is that grainy texture, which I think adds a lot more depth, dimension, and creates that feeling of the florals being realistic. So just continuing in with the same process of coloring the florals, I am bringing in the colors and blending them together and doing this very smoothly, slowly. I am actually just relaxing as I do this. Again, I will repeat the same thing for the foliage elements, bringing in the green, but the technique is more or less the same. So I am just going to leave you all with a little music here to enjoy and relax as you watch me color. For the flower centers, I did bring in mustard seeds and ripe persimmon just to bring in the tinge of the yellow and the purple, which I think further accentuates all the shades of pink, purple, blue going on these flowers. So with that done, I have used the coordinated die and die cut all of these elements, and I just want to show you how they look on a white background as well as on a black background. Personally, I think all the color pops up even more on a black background, and so I decided to go ahead and use a black card panel for my card today. So once I have that chosen, it's all about building a composition. I intend to use all of these floral elements, so just the entire cluster of orchids that I have painted and die cut on a single card to create a nice bunch, to create like an orchid plant with orchids just, falling through my card from the top, going all the way at the bottom, creating a sense of movement. And I want to bring in depth, layers, and dimension. So, with that idea in mind, I begin just playing around with all of these clusters and elements and placing them and seeing how I like them where. And once I am happy, once I have decided where all the elements go and how each flower is going to be placed, I then begin gluing them with liquid adhesive as well as foam tape. I bring in liquid adhesive to the base layers just to make sure that they are lower, and then I use foam tape on the topmost layers to sort of create depth between those layers and bring in this illusion of them being at varied levels. I think that is what makes this card that complete layered full card. I then just play around with the sentiments to see what I like best and adhere foam tape to them, set them aside. And now I am using this fairy fluff shaker from Lindy's, which when mixed with water just gives me a nice metallic tone. So I am going to use this to splatter all over my card, and you will see this adds so much shine, so much more to that black cardstock, just creating that layered look that I was talking about. I mix in white acrylic ink right in this fairy fluff mixture and splatter that as well all over my card. And once I'm happy with that, I bring back my sentiment. So I am using two sentiment words from the same coordinated set here, and I adhere them with the foam tape as well as liquid glue. And for my final finishing touches, I am bringing in some white sequins that brings that contrast on the black background, and just adhering that in threes like I always do around my composition to create a sense of movement through and through all of these layers. So with that, my card today is complete, and here is a closer look at all the layers, the details, the depth and dimension that I managed to create. I really hope that you've enjoyed this watercolor stamping technique and will give it a go for your next card making project. Do leave your comments below. I really love reading them, and check out the new release from Crafty Meraki. And I will be back with more inspiration next week. Until then, take care and bye bye.